people drove on the road according to their assessment of the severity or the danger on the road, and on their assessment they drove at a speed that they thought was reasonable and safe for themselves. And what the authorities actually did is they measured the speed at which all the people were driving on a particular stretch of road. And they drew up a table of all the speed that people were driving at, and they took the figure that accounted for 80% of the road users. In other words, if they found that at a speed of, let's say, 83 kilometers an hour, 80% of the drivers drove at that speed or below, they chose 80 as being the speed limit for that road. In other words, it was derived from what we as road users had already determined was a safe and reliable speed to use. But you see what introducing the law did? It made those 20% of people that were driving above 80, driving reasonably, driving rationally, driving safely over the speed of 80, it had now made them criminals. Which means that now we are no longer able to exercise our discretion. We are bound by an arbitrary figure. And we are told that this is for our benefit. What we are saying is, if you exceed the limit, you are at a risk of being involved in an accident. You are at a risk of dying. Now there are 2 points I need to make over here as a believer in God. God tells us that before we are born, there are 2 things that are already determined, amongst others. One of which is the time of your birth, and the second is the time of your death. And that is not going to change. That is fixed. If we believe that as believers of God, we know that nothing in this world is going to speed up the arrival of our death, and there is nothing in this world that is going to delay our death. So speed does not kill us. If we die at the time because it was our time to die. But what can happen is we can be involved in incurring injuries that can affect the quality of our life. Now, when you are driving above a particular speed, there is no guarantee that you are going to be involved in an accident. In fact, the vast majority of accidents have nothing to do with speed. There are other factors that are responsible for the accident. Furthermore, even if you are involved in an accident, there is not a guarantee that you are going to be injured, and even less so the likelihood that you are going to die. So, according to the logic that is presented to us, in order to prevent potentially a few deaths, everybody must be forced to abide by certain arbitrary imposition of speed limits, for which we will be punished if we do not obey. So in other words, in order to prevent us from incurring a potential harm, we are going to incur a definite consequence, a definite fine. And this is absurd. This is madness. We don't need speed limits. We are totally competent to determine for ourselves what is a rational speed. And when we do that, we will in fact drive much more reasonably, much more rationally, much more safely, because we will drive fast when we are able to and we need to, and we will then drive much more slowly where it is required, because we know that we can drive fast when we need to. So imposition of licenses, imposition of speed limits, totally unnecessary. What about a motor car license? Is it necessary for us to license our car every year? Here you have a vehicle which you own, which you've paid for, but you're not allowed to use it until you've obtained somebody's permission. So what advantage to us is there licensing? Licensing does serve the big advantage of us being able to prove ownership. But do we need a law to force us to have this? Surely as free people we must choose whether we want that benefit or not, and those of us who want that benefit will choose to have our car license. Or rather, we will have proof of ownership registered somewhere in a safe and reliable place. So we don't need a government institution to do this. We may register our ownership with our church. And we may take witnesses along who bear witness that we had purchased this vehicle and that I am the owner of the vehicle. We may choose the company from which we had bought the vehicle to keep a record of the fact that I had purchased it and record my witnesses, so that if a question comes out as to who the owner is, I can use this as proof of ownership. Why do I need a government institution for me to pay a fee every year, and which can prevent me from using my vehicle if I do not want to pay for it? And here this registration with the church or registration with a company that sells cars can be done totally with no cost to anyone. We don't need driver's license. In fact, there are no licenses that we require. What about fishing licenses? Do you need a license to go fishing? We are told that we need licenses to curb the exploitation of the oceans because the fish are dwindling. Who are the people that are actually taking out the majority of the fish from the oceans? It's those fishing companies that have been given licenses to take out hundreds and thousands of tons of fish every year under license, protected by law, to eliminate the fish from the ocean. And we are told that this man who wants to feed his family is not allowed to do so to preserve the fishing stock. You see, licenses preserve and protect the monopolies that are created. It's got nothing to do about protecting the fish in the ocean. It protects the monopoly of people that are exploiting the ocean. If we didn't have licenses, those who want to fish will fish, and those who don't want to fish won't fish. But what we will do is, we will ensure that those people from our country who do fish in the ocean will be empowered to protect our own fishing zone, so that our fishing boats will be militarized fishing boats. We will make sure that nobody else will come there and exploit our fishing zones. And we will make sure that we will fish to our need in a responsible way, because as free people, believe me, a free person never destroys something. A free man always grows things. It is only a slave that starts stealing and cheating. A free man can never steal. Because a free man knows that when he steals, inevitably he's harming himself. It's only a slave that steals. Why he steals? Because he knows in the back of his mind that there are people stealing from me, and so when I steal, I am trying to undo the harm that was done to me. And when government takes from people in the form of taxes, he will always try to find some way of stealing from somebody else to reclaim what was taken from him. This is what happens in the back of our minds. None of those licenses are required. What about business licenses? Do you need a license to trade? The trader will tell you, no, if you didn't have licenses, all these vendors will be coming up overnight. Are we saying that we have the right to protect our own monopoly by preventing other people to engage in legitimate trade? Do you want the person to come and steal from you rather than trading? You see, it is the licenses and the fees that we pay that make us uncompetitive and makes the street trader competitive. When all these licenses and fees disappear, we in fact become more competitive than the street trader. And our businesses are likely to prosper even in the presence of a booming of street traders. Think about it. Our businesses will actually grow in the absence of licenses. We don't have to fear the street trader. In fact, none of us requires licenses. The street trader is doing the right thing. We need to help to make it that everyone can go that way. We are told that licenses help to maintain standards. Is that really true? Let's think about it. When you have a license and you impose a high fee and high requirements in order to obtain that license, the cost of your service to the public is also proportionately increased. It makes you uncompetitive. But because you restrict entry into this field due to the high cost, you force people to accept the higher cost. You prevent